Hello and welcome to chapter 4. Wow, we've already made it to chapter 4, huh? My hair's like doing weird spiky things. I guess that's okay. Oh well. Anyway, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Um, we've made it to chapter 4. How wonderful. I'm glad to be through the first few chapters. Um, there's a lot of stuff in there, and there's more to come, but those first few are, especially the last one, those were not easy to talk about and put it out there like that, if you will. And so if you're back for another chapter, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for following along with this journey with me. And if you're new, welcome to chapter 4. Feel free to go back and watch chapters 1, 2, and 3 to get a quick recap of where we're up to. I was born a preemie, put up for adoption as a child by my mom because she had her own issues that she needed to work out, and so my grandparents adopted me and raised me. I found my grandma passed away when I was 6 and a half. Oh, sorry, dogs are messing around here. Woo! See what I mean? I had been being molested since the time I was a baby up until the time I was 12, when I was removed from my grandfather, who in turn killed himself as a result of being found out. I had been taken away, so I had some experiences with foster homes and foster families and their own challenges, as well as moving back to the house I grew up in and back in with family. And Oso says hello, and so does Izzy. And that having its own set of challenges, and yeah, and so from there, having a rocky experience with my aunt and in that situation, ending up in some even worse situations and experiences and surviving human trafficking, and that's where we come to now. And so that's a quick little recap. And at about this time, 16, 17, I had been a victim of human trafficking and was doing my best to already get myself out of that situation. I was a runaway, and I had gotten caught, and my aunt ended up just basically letting me move back out, and I don't think she really wanted to deal with me. Not that she ever really did. She had her own stuff going on, though, and she had 3 other children other than me to deal with, well, and an older son, but he wasn't living there at the time. So yeah, I was working on getting out of that situation, and I had some interesting encounters throughout those few years of my life, because that started right around the age of 15 and lasted up until, I guess, 17. And so, again, really super grateful to have survived those days. And at first, everything was in the suburbs and everything like that. And like I said, the person that was, I don't even know how to phrase that. The guy that was the cause of that, he was wanted by the law, and we had all bought property. And it was out in the middle of nowhere, and had no running water and no electricity, and just like this empty shell of a storage building on it that was stuffed full of stuff. Looking back, just really, really horrific conditions. And I had gotten a job in town at a pizza place because I didn't want to do those things anymore. And in the course of having done those things, I had met somebody that I had befriended, and he'd call and want to hang out, and he'd give me money, not for anything like that, but just to come and hang out so that I wouldn't get hurt when I came back without any money. And so we got really close, and I felt very safe with this person, and began to grow feelings for this person. And at that point, I was telling people I was older than I was. because yeah, I mean, come on now. And I had a moment of expressing my true feelings towards him and explained to him how old I was, and he had known a lot of things, but there were other things I, kind of had to protect my age and being a runaway and all that kind of stuff. So I was open and honest and forthcoming, and the age thing was an issue, which, I mean, come on, who wouldn't it be for, right? I was like 16, he was like 30 something. So 30, 31. And we separated for a while and didn't talk for a good long, at least a year. And when everything happened and I was finally free of the situation, free of the person that was at the root of that, I had expressed to the guy that I had grown feelings for that the person was wanted by the law, and he had written a letter without me knowing it and got the guy picked up. And so I'm ever grateful for him having saved my life in that way. And after I had been out of that situation and I had moved in with my friend Tracy, who was in Dallas, I had contacted this gentleman just out of the blue. Just out of the blue. I got a wild hair and wondered how he was doing. Just happened to remember his phone number because this was back in a time long before cell phones. I had a pager, but yeah, you kind of just knew people's phone numbers back then. I wonder where those brain cells went. And you know what? I could probably remember that phone number still right now. That's funny. I know I remember the one from when I was growing up, but I reached out to him and we started hanging out. And that is pretty much the foundation for my chapter 4. But before I go into that any further, I wanted to circle back to Tracy, because I was talking to her, or we were talking after I did chapter 3. And because she knew me then, she's a big part of how I was able to survive those days, an angel in my life. And so if you're watching this, Tracy, hey, I didn't realize, it's funny what we forget, but we were talking about memories from back then, and I didn't realize that the guy had called her because he knew her. I don't remember how they were related or knew each other, but her husband knew them and they knew each other and they had a history already together and knew of each other and whatever. So like I said, that's not my story to tell. So, and I really don't even know any of those details, or can't remember anyway. But I guess he had called her to come pick me up when he got picked up, because he wanted her to keep an eye on me. And I guess I was supposed to take my money and get an apartment and wait for him to get out of prison. And so she, knowing that I had this chance to be free or the other way, she pretty much talked me out of getting an apartment and basically living my life for me and getting away from all of that. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I just thought it was really neat to know a little backstory. And so she brought me into her home with her mother-in-law, Big Mama, and that was Big Mama. And Big Mama looked after me and she took care of me and she helped me to transition from one place in life to the next. And I'll forever be grateful for that. And I still have friends and family from that time in my life, and we all keep in contact, and I'm really grateful for that. It's hard to keep hold of good people or anybody in this life, and to have not only been honored and blessed to have these people mean and make such a difference in my life, but to still be able to have some of them in my life is such a godsend. But anyway, so Tracy and I were hanging out, and we were just hanging out and having fun, just being girls. We were going to the clubs and just dancing and having fun. And like I said, I was like 16, 17 years old. So, but it was a lot of fun. And it was in a time, God, I guess that was the 90s. So it was, it was different then, and it was a lot of fun. And I remember a lot of good memories and a lot of good feelings from that time in my life. And we'd go out to eat all the time. And I remember I had her try oysters at a place because, mind you, I grew up in Texas, so this is like in Dallas, and there's a lot of good different types of food down there. I miss the food in Texas. Um, but I had her try oysters, and oh my gosh, she did not like these nasty little things, and she went on, and it's still something that we laugh about today. And so I'm grateful to have gotten to have good memories and good moments throughout those years that were so hard and traumatic in ways I didn't really realize at the time, but through the years, I have. And there's been a lot of healing there too. And it's nice to be able to look back and have these good memories as well and recognize that. So I met this dude. And we just clicked. He was 15 years older than me, and he was in a wheelchair. He was a paraplegic. And he was easy to talk to, and I fell in love with him. And he was so good to me in so many ways. And God rest his soul, he's since passed on, and never really got to thank him the way I'd like to now. And so, wherever you're at, thank you. But as good as we had it, it wasn't easy either. I got married the first time at 18. I just wanted to grow up so bad, I guess. Looking back, we spend our entire childhood trying to be grown up, and then the rest of our life just trying to get in touch with our inner child again, right? So, oh yeah, it was a fairy tale wedding. But it rained, and it was supposed to be an outdoor wedding. I guess I should back up a little bit first. And so me and the guy, we started hanging out again. And it wasn't long after that we decided for me to move in. And Tracy, knowing where I had come from, she moved in with us for a while. I don't remember how long Tracy lived with us for, and I may have that come chapter 5. She'll remind me. But she wanted to make sure I was going to be okay. And I'll never forget that. And I'm glad she did, because there were reasons to have concern. There were red flags I can look back and see from the beginning. I should have probably not married him. But everything happens for a reason, and I'm really grateful, even through the hard stuff, for that part of my life. He had a lot of anger issues, and he was verbally and emotionally and physically abusive. Now, see, at that point in my life, Tracy reminded me of something else that I had to kind of laugh about. She said that I'd just wait for somebody to tell me how I felt, and I'd never express my feelings or my thoughts, and I would just go along with whatever was being said just to keep the peace. I had no voice of my own. And see, it's funny because I look back and I think about that time in my life when I was 16, 17, and see, I thought I knew it all. And you couldn't tell me any different. I was this, that, the other, and whatever. I was a teenager that thought she was grown, that had an ego the size of Texas. But so super insecure inside. I don't know. Just where I was at that point in my journey, I suppose, And so for her to say that, or to remind me that I didn't have a voice then, or I chose not to use it, and allowed other people to dictate how I felt, and what I thought, and what I said, and what I did. And goodness, thinking about that today just, it was like nails on a chalkboard. It makes me cringe. I can't even imagine. So grateful for growth here. But I forgot where I was going with that. But he had anger issues. And he was going to college. That's how I met him. He had a full scholarship to go play wheelchair basketball there at the college. And he was out from California. And see, I was from Texas. I always wanted to go to California. I had stars in my eyes, let me tell you. And it's funny the way our perceptions shift. And I can look back and be grateful for a lot of things not working out the way I had wanted them to. Even at the time where I still thought it's what I wanted. And so I had big dreams and aspirations and wanted to see Hollywood and all of that stuff. And it's no surprise that one of my favorite movies, and Tracy's too at the time, was Pretty Woman. So you gotta it was the synchronistic, I suppose, and it became my fairy tale story, even with the dark side. Because it was better than what I had, right? And yeah, I loved him, but it's a different kind of love than I have for my mate today. I put my first husband up on a big, big pedestal. And the dynamic of the relationship was a lot different. I was young, and he really did a lot to help finish raising me. And I didn't really see it that way at the time. I remember we moved from Texas because we had a house in Texas and a house in California. And he was financially comfortable. And so we were able to come and go and do as we wanted, which was nice because we were kind of like just a couple teenagers in love, even though he was 15 years older than me. And it was really romantic and idealistic from that aspect, except for when there would be the blow-ups. And, see, he was an ex-Marine. That's not how he got in the wheelchair, but he knew how to hit without leaving a bruise. And so, later in my life, all my fights left visible marks and scars. Not him. Those were like blows to the back of the head, or beating my head against the built-in cabinet in the closet, or dragging me across the house. And I remember people have asked me over the years, well, he was in a wheelchair, how did he hurt you? See, like Tracy reminded me, I didn't have a voice back then. And I didn't know how to stand up for myself, or even stand up. So I would curl into a ball and just allow myself to be beat, however that looked. And it would be so soul crushing to me, because I didn't understand how somebody who says they love you can treat you and talk to you in ways that are so contradictory. And like I said, we ended up having this big fairy tale wedding. And it was supposed to be this outdoor garden wedding, and we'd planned it for like a year. And it was at this historical site in Southern California. And so the site wasn't the nicest because it was a historical site, but it was supposed to be outside. And it was sunny and beautiful for the first wedding of the day. We had the second, and the skies opened up. They say it's good luck when it rains on your wedding day. But God's always been there watching over me, and I'm grateful for that. And so we had a house in Texas and a house in California, and we moved to the house in Southern California. And it was in the foothills, in the outskirts of LA, in the Inland Empire. And we're in these big fancy houses, and we had like this big black bottom pool in the backyard, and this big fancy neighborhood. And I remember the looks I used to get, whether it was somebody coming to the door, to try to sell something, or when I was going grocery shopping, I'd get such horrendous looks from the women, the older women, and I really didn't get it then. It was so hurtful. I just wanted to fit in, and here I was, probably looking like a trophy wife without realizing it. And I was so insecure. I would never go do anything for me. I wouldn't even cook a meal just for myself. So I was so codependent. And the last thing I ever wanted to do was rock the boat or upset him. And he was really moody and an introvert and bipolar. And so even though we did a lot of traveling and we did a lot of things, there were a lot of times we would make plans and the plans wouldn't go through because he just would change his mind. And that was always hard for me. But like I said, we did get to travel a lot. Well, for me, it was a lot. I got to go to Hawaii for my my honeymoon, which was magical. And then I got to go to like the Disneyland and the Disney World, and I got to see some beautiful things. But there wasn't one trip where there wasn't a big nightmarish fight where things were being thrown and punches were being thrown and words were being hurled. And so even the most beautiful places in the world can be marred by something like that. And I'd never tell anybody either. And I had a sister-in-law at that point, and she was my maid of honor. I didn't really have any friends or family, so I had my mom at my wedding, and we had invited like 200 people. That's all I had. I'm grateful my mom was there, though. And so my new sister-in-law had been my maid of honor for my wedding, and his friends, wives, and stuff were my bridesmaids, and I'm still grateful for you guys showing up for me if you ever watch this. Oh, why I'm crying all of a sudden. Oh, man, these chapters get me, let me tell you. I loved him. And when I was young, I was of the belief system that you didn't divorce. You stuck it out. I came from that mindset. God, I don't know where that mindset came from, because it sure did afford me a lot of years of trauma. Not to say you shouldn't work it out. I'm just saying you shouldn't stay when you're being hurt. And there was counseling, and he went on medications for a while, and things deteriorated over the years, and then we kind of messed around with some partying, and that just made things all the worse. And we ended up moving back and forth across the country 4 or 5 times within like 2 or 3 years. We had a lot of different business ventures, and I learned so much. He was a great businessman. He was a great carpenter, and he was good at so many things. Except for his anger. And there are so many memories I have with him. We were together 10 years, I think. Yeah, I was 16 when I met him, and 26 when it was over. And it wouldn't have been over probably had I not had a nervous breakdown, and I was in and out of the hospital and ended up almost killing myself. And he had told me when I came out of it that I did it because he had told me he wanted a divorce. See, I didn't know who I was outside of that relationship. I didn't know who I was inside that relationship. Oh, and that was so much of the problem. I never took the time to get to know me or to consider my own feelings or thoughts. And like I said, that's a big, really, really big part of my life. And I have so many wonderful memories, and I have so many horrible ones. And see, we didn't go around talking about these things at that time. And so, in-laws, even though we were all close to family and had wonderful family gatherings, they were the family I'd always wanted. We don't talk ever since him and I were over, and I had my nervous breakdown and everything. Life's just funny sometimes, and so I still carry a lot of sadness for people I loved that were just gone. Again, the people I loved were just gone. Poof, they're gone. My phone's ringing. I guess I'm gonna let it ring. Or not. And so I'll come back with chapter 4 continue in a little while. I could use a break anyway. Talk to you guys soon. I'm back. Hi. So this is chapter 4 continued. Like I was saying, we didn't really talk about these things to the family and stuff, You don't talk about family business outside of the family, right? And so nobody really knew except for my neighbors that I was being abused and things were so horrible. I can remember several times where he dragged me by the head, my hair, out the house through the yard and drugged me to my car and threw all of my clothes and told me just GTFO. Um, and when you're married and scared, little girl, still, I didn't know what to do. We always made up and we always tried to work it out. And there was the always, oh, I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Like I said, there were times he tried. There was. And there were times he didn't. And I don't know how he felt. I mean, he told me how he felt all the time, screaming at the top of his lungs. He told me exactly how he felt. But, deep down inside, I don't know how he really felt. And having had my own anger issues post him. Seriously? It's ringing again. Okay, I'll be back. And so, yeah, he told me how he felt all the time. And, but I don't know. I still wonder sometimes if he loved me. And I know that's a horrible thing to say. I know he loved me, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like maybe he felt like he was more obligated. But that's kind of a feeling I've struggled with my entire life. And that's something I'm aware of at this point in my life, so I don't push those people away that I care about, that I do know love me, with those little voices inside my head that aren't always telling the truth. And so, yeah, we didn't talk about it with family, even my sister-in-law, and she got to see a couple times where we had a fight. And I remember her telling me at one point, we were going to lunch or something, and she's like, I don't know why you let him talk to you like that. I'd never let a guy treat me like that. And I just felt so embarrassed and so low. And I loved him. And he didn't mean it. Or whatever it was that I justified it with at that point. And I remember another time where a neighbor actually confronted, like I got into an altercation or something, like a verbal altercation. She's yelling at me and I'm yelling at her, and I don't even remember the reason now. It may have been work related. I don't remember, like trying to work with friends or whatever. But I remember her calling that out about, well, at least my husband doesn't treat me like shit. And that was about it. So yeah, it was a thing. And I know that, like I said, the neighbors knew. He shot at me one night. And I've told people that are close to me this, but I've never really verbalized it like this. And we were fighting in our house, and this was at the house in Texas. Hi, Miss Rosie. Our house was like in this normal suburban neighborhood, and the houses were fairly close to each other. Just normal, 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And we're fighting. I want to say, gosh, it was probably 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I'm standing on one side of the bed, and he comes into his side of the bed. And so I'm against the wall, and we're fighting, and he pulled his 9 and aimed it at me. And I was like, shoot me. I didn't care because my heart was being ripped open anyway because we were fighting. So, and the gun went off. And nobody ever called the cops. You could see where the bullet next to me went out the wall. So I still wonder what that means when your husband shoots at you. Didn't believe in divorce. Oh, man. The things I put myself through for some of the beliefs I held on to. I just shake my head now. But we had good times too. Like I said, we had a lot of different business ventures. When we sold our house in Southern California, we had the coolest couple help us sell our house. And they were so neat that we decided we wanted to do real estate. And so that's what we did. And like I said, I was like 18 at this time. And so 18, 19. And I was like the youngest person in my city at that point to have gotten a real estate license. And so I didn't graduate high school. I got a GED. I actually never even stepped foot in high school. I dropped out the second 6 weeks of my ninth grade year because I had to leave home. It wasn't like I didn't want to go to school. I wanted to go to school. So I never even went to high school. And here I was. I went back and I got my GED and actually got that a year before I would have graduated. So I ended up graduating early. And with like flying colors, and I had struggled in school. Let me rephrase that. I did not struggle in school. I did the bare minimum and never really pushed myself in school because nobody cared. Nobody ever came to the school plays. I wouldn't even tell my dad when we had school plays because I was embarrassed and kids were going to make fun of me and nobody was going to show up. And I had nobody to make a costume for me. I'll be back. And so we went into real estate together, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And boy, we marketed like nobody ever marketed in that area before. There are probably still people there that talk about us when we were in real estate. Our follow through sucked. I was waiting for him to take the lead and he was waiting for me. And so although we did real estate for 2 or 3 years, I think, we just never really turned the corner with it because I was waiting for him to get up and be motivated and take the lead. And I spent a lot of time waiting. And I've done that a lot in my life, I've noticed. And so that's something I work at now, is not waiting for others. Because time just ticks by and you don't get that time back. But that's neither here nor there. We would put out flags every flag holiday, and we put out like 3,500 flags. And we'd do this in the middle of the night, and so when the neighborhoods that we would market would wake up, they'd have flags lining the streets. And we did notepads and magnets. And this is pre-cell phone. I think cell phones were just coming on board right about then. But it was not like it is today, that's for sure. And so, we had computers at the office, and we had a big desktop computer at home. We actually had a Gateway computer. We went and had it built for this purpose. And so that was a fun experience. I remember that. So we did real estate, and like I said, it just never really... It's not that we were bad at it. We were really good at it, but we could have been a lot better, and if I were to go there today, man, I'd probably do really well, but I don't know if the market would bear that now or if that's the direction I'm going with my life. But I was so scared back then. I couldn't make cold calls. I couldn't knock on doors. I had trouble in presentations. We got it done though, and it was a lot of fun. I got to be on got to be active in my community at that point in my life and be on some different committees within the city. And that was a really neat experience too. I was on a hospitality board at one point, and I remember we put on a big casino night, and we were all in the newspaper. And goodness, I was on like a political action committee, a real estate political action committee, and just got to do some really neat things. And then we were involved with other organizations that I think we did like Kiwanis at one point and had a lot of friends there. And it was really neat experiences. A lot of growing, especially for somebody at my age at that time. And I was always used to being around older people anyway, so I enjoyed it. I love learning. And so, and a lot of good stories, a lot of good history, a lot of good times. Let's see, what else? Like I said, looking back, there's some good memories. And at that point when we were doing all that marketing and all that stuff, I had people like my cousin and her friends working with us. And I had my friend Tracy and her nieces and nephews. And we'd all get together and have like these big barbecues. And oh my God, I just remembered. I don't even know how I could have forgot this. That saying that triggered it. We'd have these big parties every year for Halloween. We'd turn our house into a haunted house. And we ended up involving our business in with this. And so it became such a big deal that the city came out and grandfathered us in, and the fire marshal would come out and they'd make sure that we were all up to code. We would hire off-duty police officers to run crowd control at night. We were only open one night a year. But it would take us about 6 weeks to build it. And we'd spend a good part of the year researching and building and coming up with props and trying to be unique and creative. And we spent a lot of time and energy doing this, and it was a whole lot of fun. I think we called it the Great Haunt. Wow, I hadn't thought about that in years. And so we would have lines down the road, like an hour-long wait just to get into our little haunted house, And when we were including our business in that, I know that people were offering donations that we could give to like the local places that needed food donations. So there was a lot of fun and a lot of good memories, and I learned a lot. I got to learn how to build things and create things and express my creativity in ways that, even sitting here talking about it, that I'd forgotten. And maybe I even miss doing, and maybe not turning my house into a haunted house these days, but to build and create, yeah, I could still do that, And not only did we do real estate, we also did home repair. And so our home repair business, we ended up gearing toward real estate agents because we had done real estate. And this is after we moved from Texas back to California. We did real estate in Texas and home repair in California, in Southern California. And man, we were pretty good. It was, looking back, I was a tough little girl. I didn't want to be outdone, and I wanted to be able to keep up with the guys. And I tell you what, back then for my age, I pretty much did. And I kind of miss the physical strength I used to have back then because I was always moving stuff and working and lugging stuff, and especially because he was in a wheelchair, I had the legwork. It was me. I was, yeah. And so when we were moving stuff cross country or anything like that, and he got out there and he did it too, but I learned a lot about myself. And looking back, I'm really proud of myself for those achievements. And I don't know if I've ever said that before now. And so here I am in front of God and everybody, just recognizing those achievements at that early stage in my life. And so we were growing tired of home repair, and I was wanting to do something else. And I had always had some sort of job, but it wouldn't last long. I'd get bored easy. And I didn't have a good work ethic for working a 9-to-5 at that point in my life. And I just didn't. I didn't like holding down a 9-to-5. And it wasn't I didn't enjoy the work or the people. I guess it just wasn't a good fit at that point in my life, and I just didn't see that. I can look at it different now. And so I would job hop. And when we were in Southern California, I remember we needed to bring in some extra money or something, right? And so I was going to go get a waitressing job. And they were hiring for management too. And I almost just said the name of the establishment, and I probably shouldn't. So if you know me, you know me, you know who it was. But this job ended up being a turning point in my life, and I never would have seen it coming. This job became everything to me. I started off as a waitress there. And when I applied for assistant manager, I found out that they originally wanted to hire me like the year prior for management. And so I got the assistant manager job, and I was so happy. And it's so funny looking back, an assistant manager at some restaurant or a real estate agent, I guess everybody's definition is different, and I had some growing to do. It was all part of my journey. And so I loved my job, and I put a lot of time and effort in at work. And part of the reason, looking back, was my home life was not happy. The fighting had only gotten worse and more frequently. I was working all the time, and I would get home, and he would just sit on his butt and play video games. And I'd come home, there'd be dishes, and he'd yell at me to do the dishes. And so, that's just how it was. And my body remembers this. I'm still very upset about this. Get off your ass and do the damn dishes and don't yell at me to do it. And that's what I should have said, and it would have all been over. But I couldn't say that back then. And I think he wanted me to fight back. And he used to tell me that. He wanted me to fight back, and he'd ask me how I felt. I don't know. I don't know how I feel. And I didn't know how to verbalize it. I knew how I felt. I just didn't know how to verbalize it, and I was scared of making the situation more hostile. And so it was better to keep my mouth shut. And there have been times in my life after that situation that I wish I could still keep my mouth shut. It's not that easy these days, so. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? Because here I sit being able to verbalize my story now, where in years past I wouldn't have been able to. And so my job continued to progress, and I ended up being offered or having the ability to go for the GM position. Was I 23, 24 at the time? I got the position. I was on top of the world. This job was my identity. I mean, my marriage was, but this job became who I was. Because, see, I still hadn't taken the time to figure out who Lisa was. God, I love this job. And I had done other jobs. I had done like disabled van rental and worked in mobility and all kinds of stuff. I've had all kinds of wonderful experiences and worked with all kinds of wonderful people. But this was something I felt like I had done on my own, I think. And maybe that was it. It was the first time. And it's not that I didn't do the real estate stuff on my own, but he was sitting there by me the whole time. You know, this job, I went out and got on my own. I worked my way up. And it was a franchise. It wasn't corporate. And the gentleman owned like 9 of them in the area in Southern California. And I was the only female GM. So I'm like, empowered woman. I've got this job. I'm doing it. I'm corporate Lisa. This is awesome. I'm working 80 hours a week, 7 days a week because I'm on salary. I'd go home, we'd fight, I'd change my clothes, and I'd go sit up at work and talk to the people working the opposite shift because I didn't want to be at home anymore. And there were a lot of factors that were leading up to my snapping. It wouldn't be long after that I have a nervous breakdown. See, even though I had this job, this wonderful position, and I mean, it was wonderful. I got to go out to Hollywood and Burbank to one of the locations out there, and I'd train a couple days a week, and like it was everything to me, you know. And I took it very seriously and to heart. And I guess, you know, looking back, probably too much for somebody else's place of business. I loved it like it was my own. And like I said, that was my identity. And my mental health was starting to wane. I was partying on my off times when that wasn't very, very frequent. And at that point, it wasn't like later in life when I had some serious addiction issues. This was just playing around and not being responsible, and it was adding to my mental health decline. And it was adding to our fighting, and he was partying too, so it wasn't just me. And things were just not good at that point. And at work, even though I had this position, looking back, it was really just like, it wasn't really my position. I was a yes man, and I needed to do things the way they wanted them done, and they weren't always right or ethical. And I had a lot of struggle with that. When I was younger, I was a lot more ideal. Not that I don't have values and stuff now, but I was a lot more rigid and stern. And like I had this moral compass, and things just, you know, had to be a certain way, and right and wrong. And, you know, I just had a different view on life. And so seeing some of the things that were going on, and some of the things they were wanting me to do, and nothing like, you know, inappropriate or anything like that, but just not ethical business treatment, in my opinion. They weren't really training me how to do my job in a way that I was able to do my job in a productive way. And so they ended up transferring over an assistant manager who losses had followed her. And looking back, it was almost like a setup somehow. I don't know. Um, and so losses started happening at my store on her shift, and there was no question. And the district manager wouldn't let me fire her. I don't know if they had something going on or what the deal was, but it kept coming back to me because it's my store, it's my responsibility, right? And this went on for, I don't know, a couple weeks, and the owner's like, finally says to me, and like I said, I'm like 24, 25 at this point. If I don't stop the leak, it's going to come out of my pay. Now, see, this is where he had me because I was 24, 25. I believed that. I didn't know that that was against the law. All I knew is I knew where the problem was. They wouldn't let me fix it. I wasn't allowed to do anything about it, but I had to be responsible for it. And so I'm dealing with all of that at work. And we ended up getting robbed one night when I wasn't there, and the way that they had me handle it wasn't okay. We had some other like complaints from waitresses between the waitresses and cooks, and the way they had me handle that wasn't okay either. Like, I had no proper training, but they're wanting the proper results, and I can still feel this pressure in my body, and it's been like 20 something years. Fighting at home, losing it at work. I don't know what to do. I snapped. And that's going to be chapter 5. Ha ha! You like how I did that? So I won't go any further than that. But that was my breaking point, and that breaking point becomes a big fork in my life. And a lot of things shifted as a result of that breaking point. But I'm grateful. You know, I can talk about the abuse, and I can talk about the pain, and I can talk about losing people I loved, and I can also look back and I can see so many good memories and so many wonderful lessons learned. And like I said, God rest his soul. He raised me in a lot of ways. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. Even if I took a few butt whoopings in the process that I shouldn't have had to, you know. We tried to stay friends afterward, and it wasn't possible, and we'll talk about that in an upcoming chapter down the road. But we did. We had a lot of good times. I learned a lot of good business stuff from him. He had a beautiful, brilliant mind. He played the guitar, and so I don't really know how to play the guitar, but there was a time in a day where I could pick it up and play a couple things, and he was a big part of my life. Really big part of my life, and he saved it. He really did. He saved it, you know. And so let me be cliche here and say for a moment he was my knight in shining armor, or knight in shining titanium, since he was in a wheelchair. There's so many things I'd love to be able to say to him now. Oh, and his family too. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the way things ended there and life shifted. For the apology I never got to say, I'm so sorry for my role in all of that. And looking back through the abuse in the years, you know, his mom, he had a single mom. She was older. She was such a wonderful lady. His family was all so wonderful. She came from a time of day where you didn't talk about things like that, and so you just carried on, and I don't think she knew how to handle a lot of what was going on, especially when I snapped. And I know it was hard on all of them, and so thank you to everybody I've known since then, or from then. Yeah, and like I said, I still have friends from back then, and I'm grateful for my lifelong relationships. Like I said earlier on in this chapter, not everybody gets to keep those relationships, and I've gotten to keep a lot of mine, and for that I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the growing I got to do during those years. I'm grateful I got to get out of a life that many people don't ever get to get out of. And I'm grateful for the lessons learned and for the person I was then.
through all those years, who's got me to the woman I am now and I'm becoming. And so with that, I'm going to end this chapter 4. And as always, please feel free to leave me comments, questions, thoughts. I really appreciate the engagement, guys. I love making that connection with you, and I hope that this chapter, among the other chapters and anything else I've put out, has offered you some hope, some help, some inspiration, motivation. If anything, at least I hope you were amused. And I hope you have an inspired day. And I'm just giving you all my love. And we'll talk again soon. All right. Bye for now.